Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle seat as the engines hummed to life, the low vibration traveling up her spine like an old friend. The viewport framed the sprawling orbital station of the Galactic Concorde, a lattice of silver spires glinting against the void, where diplomats from 100 worlds bartered peace and power. Alara's crew, 3 humans handpicked for their grit, sat strapped in around her. Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual smirk and grease-stained fingers. Lena, the sharp-eyed navigator whose caution balanced Jax's recklessness. And Tomas, the quiet medic, his steady hands already checking the medkit for the umpteenth time. Approaching docking bay 7, Lena announced, her voice calm over the intercom, fingers dancing across the console. The shuttle nudged forward, aligning with the station's massive airlock. Alara nodded, her mind already racing ahead to the summit. Earth had been invited as observers, a courtesy after decades of being dismissed as a backwater planet. But rumors swirled. The Council was about to proclaim a new edict, one that would bind all fringe worlds tighter to the core empires, stripping away the autonomy humans had clawed from the stars. The airlock cycled with a hiss, and they stepped into the station's cavernous atrium. Holographic banners floated in the air, proclaiming unity in a dozen languages, their light casting ethereal glows on the diverse crowd, scaled Dravari traders, feathered Alori envoys, and the occasional hulking Gorath security detail. Alara led the way, her boots echoing on the polished deck. Jax muttered under his breath about the over-designed architecture, while Lena scanned the crowd with a navigator's eye for exits and threats. Tomas just observed, silent as ever. They reached the observation gallery just as the Council's chamber doors parted. The chamber below was a grand amphitheater, ringed by tiered seats filled with representatives. At the center dais stood High Arbiter Krell, a towering vexary with iridescent skin and eyes like polished obsidian. His voice boomed through the amplifiers, resonant and unyielding. The Galactic Concorde faces threats unseen since the Void Wars. To ensure stability, we proclaim the Authority Directive. All independent sectors, including the Sol Fringe, shall submit to centralized oversight. Resources, fleets, and decisions will align under Council mandate. Resistance invites dissolution. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Alara's jaw tightened. Earth's colonies, hard-won outposts on Mars, Titan, and beyond, were no one's to commandeer. Jax leaned in, whispering, "They're talking about us like we're some unruly kids. Time to show M what human grit looks like." Lena shot him a warning glance, but Alara held up a hand, her eyes locked on Krell. The proclamation wasn't just words, it was a chain forged in the name of unity, ready to drag humanity back to the sidelines. As the session adjourned, Alara's comm buzzed, a priority message from Earth's envoy. "Voss, we need you on the ground floor. The Council's not done, they're calling for demonstrations of compliance." She exchanged looks with her team. This wasn't observation anymore. It was the spark. They descended via the gravlift, the station's artificial gravity shifting subtly underfoot. The lower levels buzzed with activity. Aides rushing with datapads, security droids patrolling with unblinking sensors. Alara spotted a cluster of human delegates near a side corridor, their faces pale but determined. One Ambassador Hale waved them over. "Captain, good you're here. The Vexery want a test. Our shuttle systems interfaced with their oversight protocol. If we don't comply, they impound it and everything we brought." Jax's smirk faded into a scowl. "Over my dead circuits." Lena frowned, already calculating risks. Tomas unpacked his kit quietly, as if preparing for wounds that hadn't yet come. Alara nodded to Hale. "We'll handle it. But on our terms." The interface chamber was a sterile cube, walls lined with glowing ports and holographic displays. A Vexery technician, all sharp angles and impatience, waited with a data probe extended. "Submit your vessel's core for integration. It is the law." Alara stepped forward, her voice steady. "We're observers, not subjects. Show us what this integration entails first." The technician's eyes narrowed, but he complied, jacking the probe into a demo console. Lines of code scrolled across the holoscreen, overrides for navigation, resource allocation, even life support. Jax whistled low. "That's not oversight, that's a leash." Lena traced a pattern on her own pad, cross-referencing. It's got backdoors everywhere. One glitch, and they could lock us out entirely. As the technician droned on about security benefits, Ilara felt the weight of it all. Earth had bootstrapped its way to the stars with ingenuity born of scarcity. No vast empires, just stubborn humans turning scraps into ships. This directive would choke that fire. She glanced at her crew, seeing the same resolve mirrored back. "We're not signing away our freedom," she said quietly. "Jax, can you rig a sandbox? Simulate compliance without giving them the keys." Jax grinned, pulling tools from his belt. "Give me 10 minutes. Lena began plotting evasion vectors, her caution sharpening into focus. Tomas monitored vitals, his presence a quiet anchor. The technician hovered, suspicious, but Ilara kept him talking, buying time with questions about the directive's history, details she'd memorized to sound engaged. Sparks flew as Jax worked, his hands a blur. The demo console flickered under his tweaks, feeding false data back to the probe. "Done?" he murmured. "They think we're hooked." Elena stared at the holographic display flickering in the dim glow of the command deck, her fingers tightening around the armrest of her chair. The council's proclamation looped again, the alien ambassador's voice droning in translated English. "Earth's integration into the Galactic Accord is hereby enforced. Your primitive defenses are irrelevant. Compliance ensures prosperity, resistance invites obsolescence." The words hung like a noose, but Elena's jaw set firm. She was no stranger to ultimatums. Growing up on the Mars colonies had taught her that. Beside her, Marcus Hale leaned back, his lanky frame slouched in mock nonchalance, though his eyes darted across the data streams with sharp focus. "Obsolescence? That's rich coming from a bunch of tentacled bureaucrats who still use quantum relays for coffee orders." He tapped a console, pulling up schematics of the incoming fleet. 3 cruisers, each the size of a small moon, their hulls etched with the Accord's spiraling emblem. Marcus's wit masked the grind of endless simulations he'd run through the night, but Elena caught the fatigue in his slumped shoulders. Kira Voss paced the narrow deck, her boots thudding softly against the grated floor. Cautious as ever, she glanced at the viewport where stars streaked by in hyperspace. "We can't just quip our way out of this, Marcus. Their shields alone could vaporize our escort in seconds." Kira's hands fidgeted with a toolkit, her engineer's mind already dissecting failure points. She'd patched the Odyssey's drives more times than Elena could count, each fix a testament to human stubbornness against the void. Elena stood, cutting off the hologram with a swipe. "Enough playback. The councils declared us a protectorate, our tech, our resources, all under their thumb. But they don't know us yet." She moved to the central holotable, where a model of Sol system rotated slowly. Earth's blue marble gleamed, dotted with orbital stations and the faint outline of defense grids. The challenge wasn't just the fleet, it was the Accord's lockdown protocols, sealing trade routes and jamming comms. One wrong move, and humanity's fragile expansion halted cold. Marcus straightened, his grin fading into something more resolute. "Their authorities all pomp until we poke it. Remember the Belt skirmish? We turned their boarding drones into scrap with rerouted mining lasers." He zoomed the holo to the Odyssey specs, highlighting the experimental warp coil Kira had jury-rigged last year. "If we sync this with the asteroid belt's debris field, we could create a feedback loop in their sensors. Make him think the whole system's rigged to blow." Kira stopped pacing, her brow furrowing. "That's not a plan, that's a prayer. The coil's unstable, push it too hard and we slingshot ourselves into the sun." She leaned over the table, tracing a line from Jupiter's moons to the fleet's approach vector. Caution defined her, born from too many close calls on deep space halls, but it fueled her precision. "We need redundancies. Divert power from life support if we have to." The alert chime cut through their debate, red lights pulsing across the deck. "Incoming transmission," the ship's AI intoned, voice calm as a summer breeze. Elena nodded, and the holo shifted to a live feed. The lead cruiser, its comms officer, a scaled Krellian with eyes like polished obsidian, filling the screen. "Human vessel Odyssey, this is Accord Enforcer Prime Varric. Surrender your navigational codes immediately. Further evasion constitutes an act of war." Elena's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady, projecting the bridge feedback. Enforcer Varric, we're explorers, not combatants. Our codes are for charting the unknown, not handing over keys to our home. It was a stall, buying seconds while Marcus's fingers flew over his panel, initiating the sensor tweak. Varric's scales rippled in what Elena guessed was irritation. Your species' ingenuity is noted, but irrelevant. The Council has spoken. A tractor beam locked on, the deck shuddering as the Odyssey lurched. Kira cursed under her breath, diving for the engineering station. Compensating, thrust at 80%. Marcus hit execute, and the warp coil hummed to life, a low vibration thrumming through the hull. Debris signatures bloomed on the hollow, false echoes mimicking a minefield. The tractor's pull faltered, Varric's image flickering with confusion. What trickery is this? Elena allowed a small smile. Just a little human hospitality. But as the fleet adjusted course, closing the gap, she saw the flaw. Their plan had bought time, not escape. The cruiser's secondary weapons array powered up, a warning shot grazing the shields. Sparks flew from a console and Kira shouted, "Shields at 60. We can't hold this vector." The stakes sharpened. One clever dodge and they might slip into the belt's cover. Fail and the Odyssey became the first casualty in Earth's redefined stand. Elena gripped the console, her brave resolve steeling against the encroaching dark. Adjust course, Kira. Let's show them what grit looks like. Captain Elias Thorne gripped the armrest of his command chair, the hum of the shuttle's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static as they punched through the nebula's edge, purple tendrils of gas swirling past in eerie silence. Beside him, Dr. Lena Vasquez hunched over her console, her fingers dancing across holographic displays, sweat beading on her forehead despite the recycled air. "Shields holding at 60%, she said, voice steady but edged with strain. "That ion storm's playing havoc with the sensors. If we don't clear it soon, we will," Thorne cut in, his tone brooking no doubt. He was the rock in this crew, the veteran spacer who'd stared down pirate fleets and asteroid fields without flinching. But even he felt the weight of their mission pressing in. The Council's edict had branded humanity as unruly primitives, stripping Earth of its colony rights and demanding surrender of all tech. They were smuggling proof of human innovation to the neutral outpost of Epsilon Eridani, a data core brimming with designs for warp-efficient engines that could upend the galaxy's power balance. Lieutenant Kira Voss, their wiry engineer, poked her head up from the maintenance hatch in the floor. Grease streaked her face and her toolkit clanged against the ladder rungs. Cap Ivory routed power to the thrusters, but if that storm spikes again, we're looking at a hull breach. We can't afford to lose the core. Thorne nodded, his jaw set. Keep her steady, Kira. Lena, any sign of pursuit? Vasquez shook her head, eyes narrowing at the readouts. Negative. But the Council's patrols are ghosts in this soup. One wrong turn and we're done. The shuttle shuddered violently, alarms blaring as a fresh wave of ionized particles slammed into them. Thorne's hands flew to the controls, banking hard to starboard. Sparks erupted from a panel near Voss, who cursed and dove back into the hatch, wrench in hand. Got a short here, hold on. Through the chaos, Thorne glimpsed a shadow on the long-range scan. A sleek Council interceptor, its silhouette cutting through the nebula like a predator's fin. It was closing fast, weapons hot. Evasive maneuvers, he barked. Lena, plot us a course through the densest gas pocket. Buy us time. Vasquez's fingers blurred, the holograms spinning with projected trajectories. But it's risky. We might fry the NAV computer. Better than capture, Thorne replied, slamming the throttle forward. The shuttle groaned, engines whining as they dove into the violet haze. Voss's voice echoed up from below, reroute complete. Shields at 80, go go. The interceptor fired, a lance of plasma searing past their port side, close enough to rattle the hull. Thorne twisted the controls, the ship corkscrewing through the storm. Alarms wailed, but he tuned them out, focusing on the rhythm of the fight, the push and pull of thrust against inertia. In the rear compartment, the data core sat secured in its cradle, its faint blue glow a beacon of hope. If they delivered it, Earth's defiance could rewrite the stars. But one hit and it all crumbled to ash. Vasquez glanced at Thorn, her usual caution cracking into resolve. Incoming again, brace. The plasma bolt struck true this time, shearing off a stabilizer fin. The shuttle spun wildly, gravity compensators failing in a stomach-lurching whirl. Voss yelled from below, her voice cutting through the din. "I've got it, manual overrides engaged." Thorn wrestled the ship back, sweat stinging his eyes. The interceptor loomed larger on the screen, but the nebula's heart swallowed them whole, sensors going blind. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, broken only by their ragged breaths. Then Voss's triumphant shout, "We're clear!" lost them in the interference. Thorn exhaled, leaning back as the storm thinned. But the damage was done, the shuttle limped now, life support flickering. Epsilon Eridani was still hours away, and the Council's net was tightening. They had to adapt, or the redefinition of authority would end before it began. Elena gripped the console edge as the shuttle shuddered through the nebula's haze, the violet tendrils coiling like living smoke against the viewport. Tom hunched over his jury-rigged scanner, fingers dancing across exposed circuits, his usual smirk replaced by a furrowed brow. "These readings are off the charts," he muttered, voice tight. "The Council's probes are thicker than I thought, swarming like pissed-off hornets." Lee leaned forward from her seat, eyes scanning the holographic display where red blips pulsed in erratic patterns. "We can't afford another detour. The delegation's waiting on Epsilon Station, and if we miss the summit, Earth's leverage evaporates." Her words carried the weight of caution, but there was steel beneath, honed from years negotiating with species who viewed humans as quaint relics. The shuttle lurched again, alarms blaring as a proximity warning lit the cabin. Elena punched the thrusters, veering hard left. A probe glanced off the hull with a metallic screech, sparks flying from the impact panel. "Hold on," she barked, sweat beading on her forehead. The nebula's interference scrambled their shields, turning what should have been a routine jump into a gauntlet. Tom slammed a fist on his console, rerouting power from life support to the evasion array. Air grew stuffy, recyclers humming louder to compensate. "Got it, deploying the decoy flare. If these bugs chase shadows, we've got a window." He hit the release, and a burst of illusory signatures scattered into the void, drawing two probes away like moths to flame. But the third one adapted, its sleek form pivoting with unnatural grace, locking onto their trail. Elena's mind raced, dodge, weave, anything to shake it. The probe fired a warning pulse, a grazing shot that fried their secondary comms. Static filled the speakers, Lee's attempts to hail the station dissolving into white noise. "They're learning," Lee said, her voice steady despite the fear flickering in her eyes. "The Council's tech evolves mid-hunt. We need to think like them, or better." Elena nodded, eyes locked on the viewport where the probe closed in, its sensors glowing like predatory eyes. Tom's hands blurred, splicing a fragment of human code into the shuttle's signature, a glitchy rhythm mimicking the nebula's natural fluctuations. "Earth trick, make him dance to our tune." The probe hesitated, its pursuit faltering as the shuttle blended into the swirling gases. Elena pushed the engines to their limit, the craft groaning under the strain. They broke free into clearer space, the station's spires emerging like a beacon amid the stars. But the cost lingered, a scorched hull, flickering lights, and the knowledge that the Council's net was tightening. Docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk, and the trio exchanged glances, relief tempered by resolve. The summit awaited, but so did the real fight. Earth's words would redefine more than authority. They'd carve a path through the stars, one clever evasion at a time. Elena Voss gripped the armrest of the shuttle's command chair, her knuckles whitening as the vessel shuddered through the nebula's outer fringes. The violet haze outside the viewport twisted like living smoke, playing havoc with the sensors. "Status Kai?" she barked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "Dear." Kai Rin hunched over his console, fingers flying across the holographic display. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his eyes sparkled with that irrepressible glint. "Shields holding at 60%, Captain. This nebula's got some nasty interference. It's like it's chewing on our comms array. If we push deeper without recalibrating, we'll be flying blind." Ambassador Lyra Thorne leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, her sharp features etched with impatience. We can't afford delays. The Council's envoy is expecting us at the core station in under 2 hours. If we miss that window, our petition for observer status gets buried in bureaucracy. Elena nodded, her mind racing. The journey from Earth had been a gauntlet of uncharted space, but this nebula was the real wild card, an environmental hazard the alien maps had glossed over as nominal turbulence. Their initial plan was simple: skim the edges, boost the engines, and punch through to clear skies. But the first pass had backfired spectacularly. The interference had scrambled their navigation, forcing an emergency burn that drained half their fuel reserves. "All right," Elena said, unstrapping herself. "Kai, talk me through a manual override. Lyra, get on the auxiliary comms, hail that envoy again. See if they can feed us a vector from their side." Kai swiveled in his seat, grinning despite the tension. "Manual? You sure? Last time I jury-rigged something like this, we ended up orbiting a gas giant for a day." "That's why you're the genius," Elena shot back, clapping his shoulder as she moved to the engineering panel. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, flipping switches and rerouting power flows. The shuttle groaned in protest, a deep vibration humming through the deck plates. Lyra activated the comms, her voice calm and measured. "This is Ambassador Thorne of the Sol delegation. Envoy Krell, we're encountering nebula interference en route to the core. Requesting navigational assistance." Static crackled in response, then, a synthesized voice filtered through, alien, clipped, and devoid of warmth. "Sol delegation, your approach is irregular. The nebula is a designated test of resolve. Proceed at your discretion. No vectors provided. Authority demands proof." Elena's jaw tightened. Proof. The word hung in the air like a challenge. The Council had proclaimed their dominion over the sector, dismissing Earth's upstart claim to a seat at the table. But out here, with the ship trembling and the fuel gauges dipping into the red, it felt less like politics and more like survival. Kai's console beeped urgently. "Captain, incoming flux. Looks like a plasma eddy. If it hits us broadside, we're done." Elena slid into the co-pilot's seat, her eyes locked on the viewport. The nebula swirled, birthing a glowing tendril that snaked toward them. No time for second guesses. Evasive pattern delta. "Kai, vent the auxiliary tanks, give us a burst." He hesitated for a split second, then nodded. "Venting now. Hold on." The shuttle lurched as compressed gas exploded from the rear vents, propelling them sideways just as the eddy slammed past. Alarms wailed, lights flickering, but they cleared it, barely. Elena's heart pounded, the acrid scent of overheating circuits filling the cabin. "Lyra halit sharply. That was too close. If we keep this up, we'll limp into the station, if we get there at all." Elena wiped her brow, forcing a grim smile. "Then we adapt." "Kai, what's our new ETA if we thread the needle manually?" 40 minutes, give or take a miracle," he replied, already plotting the course. His fingers danced, weaving a path through the chaos on the display, a human touch amid the alien storm. As the shuttle dove back in, the nebula's glow bathed them in eerie light, casting long shadows across their faces. Elena felt the weight of it all, not just the hazard but what it represented. Earth wasn't asking for authority anymore, they were redefining it, one desperate maneuver at a time. But with fuel dwindling and the core station's silhouette just beginning to resolve on the sensors, the cost was mounting. One wrong twist and their bold gamble could end in silence. The dim glow of the auxiliary lights flickered across the bridge of the UNS Endurance, casting long shadows that danced like uneasy specters. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles whitening as she stared at the holographic display. The alien fleet encircled them now, a noose of sleek, iridescent vessels from the Zypheron Dominion, their weapons primed and humming with barely restrained energy. What had started as a diplomatic standoff in the neutral sectors had escalated into this. A blockade that pinned the Endurance against the gravitational pull of a rogue asteroid field. "They're hailing us again, Captain," said Lieutenant Marcus Hale from the comm station, his voice steady but edged with the fatigue of 12 straight hours. Hale was the cautious one, always double-checking protocols, his wiry frame hunched over the console as if he could will the signals to make sense. Same demand, surrender the artifact and submit to council authority. Elena didn't turn. The artifact, a crystalline relic unearthed from Earth's ancient ruins, pulsing with unexplained quantum signatures, sat secured in the cargo hold. The council had claimed it as galactic heritage, but she knew better. It was leverage, a key to technologies that could tip the balance of power. Patch it through, she replied, her tone clipped. Brave didn't mean reckless, it meant facing the storm head-on. The view screen shimmered, resolving into the stern visage of High Arbitrator Lurvex, his multifaceted eyes glinting like polished obsidian. The Zypheron leader's tendrils twitched and what Elena had learned was irritation. Human vessel, your defiance insults the proclaimed authority. The council has decreed the relic's return. Comply or we will extract it by force. Elena's jaw tightened. Force. That word hung in the air, heavy with the ghosts of past human skirmishes. Colonies lost, crews vanished into the void. She leaned forward, her dark eyes locking onto Lurvex's. Arbitrator, we've shown you the scans. This isn't just some trophy. It's tied to our history, our survival. You want authority? Earn it through dialogue, not threats. A ripple of static interrupted, and Dr. Aisha Rahman burst onto the bridge from the engineering corridor, her lab coat smeared with lubricant and her curly hair escaping its hasty bun. Aisha was the spark of the team, witty under fire, her mind a whirlwind of solutions. Captain, I've got a workaround on the drives. But it's risky, the asteroid field's interference is shredding our NAV systems. One wrong pulse and we're debris. Elena nodded, absorbing the update without breaking eye contact with the screen. Understood. Hale, jam their targeting arrays if they twitch. Aisha, prep the evasion pattern we drilled last sim. Lurvex's tendrils coiled tighter. Your ingenuity is noted but futile. The council's edict is absolute. Earth redefined nothing. You are but newcomers scrambling in the dark. The transmission cut, and alarms blared as the first warning shots lanced past the hull, close enough to rattle the deck plates. Elena's heart pounded, but she kept her voice level. Evasive maneuvers now. Let's show them what redefining means. Aisha dashed back to her station, fingers flying over the controls. The Endurance shuddered as thrusters fired in a jagged ballet, weaving through the asteroid field's jagged teeth. Chunks of rock the size of shuttles tumbled lazily in the low gravity, their surfaces pitted and unforgiving. One grazed the shields, sparking blue fire across the forward array, a stark reminder that space didn't forgive mistakes. Hale's console beeped urgently. Incoming salvo, maemme. They're coordinating with the field's gravity wells, smart bastards. Adapt, Elena snapped, her mind racing through contingencies. She'd led mining ops on Titan, stared down plasma storms. This was just another hazard, external and conquerable. Route auxiliary power to point defense. Aisha, can we spoof their sensors? Make us look like a ghost in the rocks. Aisha grinned fiercely, sweat beading on her forehead. Already on it. Uploading a fractal echo from the relic signature should scatter their locks like confetti. The ship bucked as lasers sliced the void, one beam shearing off a distant asteroid in a silent explosion of dust and fragments. The debris cloud bloomed, a hazy veil that the Endurance plunged into, engines whining against the strain. Elena felt the pull in her gut, the G-forces pressing her into the chair. Tension coiled in the air, thick as the dust outside, but there was no room for doubt. Not with the crew counting on her, not with Earth's fragile claim hanging by this thread. From the shadows of the asteroid cluster, a smaller Zypheron scout darted into view, its weapons charging. Hale cursed under his breath. They're closing the gap, personal escort for the big guns. Elena hit the intercom. All hands brace for contact. We're not surrendering, Jack. Her words weren't a speech, just truth, forged in the heat of the moment. The Endurance surged forward, a human arrow piercing the alien encirclement, betting everything on wit and grit against the Council's unyielding grasp. But as the scout fired, Elena glimpsed a flaw in their formation, a momentary hesitation, a crack in the authority they so proudly proclaimed. It was enough. For now. The dim hum of the auxiliary engines vibrated through the deck plating as Captain Elena Reyes gripped the armrest of her command chair. The bridge of the UNS Vanguard felt smaller now, hemmed in by the holographic displays flickering with red alerts. Outside, the nebulous tendrils clawed at the hull, a swirling mass of ionized gas that played havoc with their sensors. They had evaded the Council's patrol ships for 2 jumps, but fuel reserves were dipping ING into the critical zone. Another miscalculation and they'd be adrift in this cosmic graveyard. Status on the core bypass? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. She glanced at Engineer Tomas Hale, who was elbow-deep in an access panel, sparks dancing from his welding torch like fireflies in the low light. Tomas wiped sweat from his brow, his wiry frame tense under the jumpsuit. It's holding, Cap. But the nebula's interference is frying the relays faster than I can patch them. We need to vent the excess heat soon, or it'll cook us from the inside. Lieutenant Kira Voss, ever the sharp-eyed tactician, leaned over her console, her fingers flying across the interface. Incoming signatures, 3 Council interceptors, closing from Vector 7. They're using the nebula for cover just like we are. ETA 15 minutes. Elena nodded, her mind racing through options. The Council had branded Earth a rogue outlier after the Soul Accord fell apart, proclaiming their universal authority over all habitable zones. But humanity's grit had turned defiance into survival, scavenging tech, forging alliances in the shadows. Now, with the Vanguard carrying encrypted data that could expose the Council's fabricated claims to the outer colonies, failure wasn't an option. Losing the ship meant losing the proof, and Earth would be painted as the aggressor forever. Options? She said, turning to the team. No panic in her tone, they drilled this 100 times. Tomas straightened, torch in hand. We could rig the waste recyclers to flush the heat into the nebula. It'll mask our signature, buy us time. But it'll flood the lower decks with vapor, breathing gear mandatory for anyone down there. Kira shook her head, her dark hair catching the console glow. Risky. The interceptors have gravitic sensors. They might still sniff us out. Better to double back, use the asteroid cluster at Mark 29er for a slingshot maneuver. It's tight, but our inertial dampeners can handle it. Elena weighed it, the weight of command pressing like the nebula's unseen pressure. Tomas was the cautious one, always thinking of the crew's immediate survival. Kira pushed the bold plays, her wit cutting through doubt like a laser. They'd clashed before, on the Mars run when Kira's shortcut nearly cost them an engine, but it was that friction that kept them sharp. Both, Elena decided. Tomas, start the vent sequence. Kira, plot the slingshot. We'll make them think we're a ghost echo. She stood, the chair creaking under her. And get me a channel to the engine room. No one's going down there without backup. As Tomas hustled off, Kira's console beeped, a faint anomaly in the nebula's soup. Wait, that's not Council tech. It's a distress ping human signature. Faint, but it's there. Elena's pulse quickened. In this stretch of space, humans were unicorns, scattered refugees mostly. Triangulate it. If it's a trap, we ghost it. If not. She let the implication hang. Resources were thin, helping could doom them. But leaving one of their own? That wasn't the human way. The ping sharpened as Kira worked, revealing a battered freighter, the SS Orion, limping on emergency power. Its captain, a grizzled voice crackling over the comm, identified as Marcus Hale, Tomas's estranged brother, of all ironies. Stranded after a council raid stripped their convoy, they had scraps of intel that dovetailed perfectly with the Vanguard's cargo. Logs proving the council's authority was built on forged treaties, redrawn borders swallowing human outposts. Brother? Tomas muttered when Elena patched him in, his face paling under the bridge lights. He ditched us years ago. Said the fight was suicide. Family's complicated, Elena replied, clapping his shoulder. But this could be our edge. Kira, adjust course. We're linking up. The maneuver was a ballet of precision amid chaos. The Vanguard shuddered as they vented heat, plumes of steam blooming into the nebula like ethereal sails, scattering sensor ghosts. The interceptors veered toward decoys, buying precious minutes. Docking clamps engaged with a metallic groan, the Orion's airlock hissing open to reveal Marcus, taller than Tomas with the same stubborn jaw but etched with fresh scars. "No time for reunions," Marcus said, thrusting a data slate into Elena's hands. "Council's got a kill order on anything human in this sector. Your ship's the beacon they're hunting." Tomas eyed him warily but nodded, grabbing tools to integrate the Orion's failing systems. "You always did pick the worst spots to show up." As the brothers worked in tense silence, Kira monitored the scopes. The interceptors were regrouping, their formation tightening like a noose. Elena synced the data, the combined files painting a damning picture. The Council's proclamation wasn't authority, it was conquest, humanity's ingenuity the only thing standing between truth and erasure. "Engines hot," Tomas called. "But the slingshot's our window, now or never." Elena took the helm herself, the console alive under her hands. The Vanguard surged forward, towing the Orion like a wounded ally, diving into the asteroid field's jagged embrace. Rocks tumbled in slow motion. Elena gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static-laced feeds from the outer sensors, painting the asteroid field in jagged grays and blacks. Jax hunched over his console, fingers dancing across holographic displays, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. "They're closing the net," he muttered, voice tight but laced with that familiar edge of sarcasm. "Council enforcers at Vector 37, pinging us like we're the galaxy's most wanted pest." Dr. Lena stood behind him, her arms crossed, eyes narrowed at the tactical overlay. She was the steady one, always calculating odds, but even now her fingers tapped a restless rhythm against her elbow. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before they lock us in." The drive's still unstable from that last jump. Pushing it harder risks a cascade failure. Elena nodded, her mind racing through options. The Council's proclamation had been clear. Earth's unorthodox ingenuity threatened their tidy order, so they'd redefine sovereignty as submission. No more human expansion, no more meddling with forbidden tech. But surrendering the prototype they'd smuggled out wasn't an option, not with what it could mean for home. "Options?" Elena asked, keeping her tone even. Jax snorted, pulling up a schematic of the field. "We could slingshot through that cluster, use the rocks for cover. Risky, but I've got a tweak for the inertial dampeners that might hold." Lena shook her head. "Or we signal the relay buoy we planted. Buy time with a decoy burst. But if they trace it..." Her voice trailed off, the unspoken weight hanging. "Trace it back to the hidden colony ship, and the fragile network of human outposts crumbles." The ship shuddered as a proximity alert blared, red lights strobing across the bridge. Enforcer drones, sleek and predatory, darted into view on the screen, their energy signatures pulsing like hunting predators. Elena's jaw set. She'd led scavenging runs on derelict stations before the Council's edict, faced down plasma storms and failing hulls. This was just another hazard, but scaled to stars. Jax prepped the slingshot. Lena armed the countermeasures. "We're not handing them the key to our future." Jax's hands blurred over controls, rerouting power in a cascade of green confirmations. "Dampeners at 80%, hold your breath, folks." The ship lurched forward, thrusters firing in controlled bursts, weaving toward the asteroid swarm. Chunks of ancient rock loomed, pitted and silent, guardians of forgotten wars. Lena monitored the drive, her voice a calm anchor amid the rising whine of straining systems. "Temperature spiking. If we miscalculate by a degree." A drone clipped the edge of their shield, sending sparks across the hull. Alarms wailed. Elena braced as the ship banked hard, gravity tugging at her like an insistent hand. "Evasive pattern delta." Jax called, and the vessel twisted, scraping past a boulder the size of a skyscraper. The impact's echo reverberated, metal groaning in protest. On the screen, two enforcers peeled off, pursuing the decoy signal Lena had fired, a ghost pulse mimicking their signature. But the third drone adapted, its form shimmering as it accelerated, locking a tractor beam. The ship bucked, pulled sideways into the field's heart. Elena's console lit with warnings, structural integrity dropping. "Cut auxiliary power," she ordered. Jax complied, his wit forgotten in the grit of the moment. "They're reeling us in like space bait." Lena's eyes flicked to Elena. We overload the prototype's core, create a feedback loop in their beam. It'd fry the drone, maybe give us a window. The cost flashed in Elena's mind. The prototype was their edge, a human-engineered fusion of scavenged alien tech that could redefine warp travel. Lose it and Earth's defiance stalls. But lose the ship and they lose everything. Do it, Elena said, voice steady. Lena nodded, her caution yielding to necessity, and initiated the sequence. Energy surged through the conduits, the bridge lights dimming to a bloody glow. The tractor beam faltered, the drone sparking in silent explosion, a brief supernova against the void. The ship spun free, tumbling into the asteroid's shadow. Panting, Jax wiped his brow. That worked. But the core's damaged, output's down 30%. Elena unstrapped, standing tall despite the ache in her shoulders. The field receded on the screen, enforcers scattering to regroup. They'd bought time, but the council's net was tightening. One outpost saved, perhaps, but the cost lingered in the flickering readouts. Their ingenuity had bent the rules again, but at what breaking point? The dim hum of the shuttle's engines vibrated through Captain Elena Vasquez's boots as she gripped the control yoke, eyes locked on the swirling nebula ahead. The alien vessel's debris field stretched like a graveyard of twisted metal, remnants of the council's enforcer ship they'd just crippled. Her crew, 3 souls she'd trust with her life, huddled in the cramped cockpit, faces etched with exhaustion but unyielding resolve. Scans show the council's fleet is regrouping on the far side, said Dr. Liam Chin, his fingers dancing over the holographic display. Always the cautious one, he adjusted his glasses, voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. If we push through the nebula we might lose them, but the interference could fry our shields. Elena nodded, her jaw set. Brave to a fault, she'd led them this far by sheer grit, turning a diplomatic envoy into a rogue operation when the Council declared Earth's sovereignty a primitive delusion. No speeches needed. Her actions spoke, diving into firestorms, outmaneuvering blockades. We don't have a choice. The data core we pulled from their wreck has the codes to expose their lies. If we don't get it to the neutral station, everything we've fought for unravels. From the navigator station, Jax Harlan cracked his knuckles, a wry grin splitting his bearded face. The witty engineer, quick with a quip even under fire, patched a flickering panel. Fry the shields? Hell, I've jury-rigged worse with spit and spite. Give me 30 seconds and I'll reroute power to the inertial dampeners. We'll dance through that gas cloud like it's a ballroom. The nebula loomed larger, its tendrils of purple and gold coiling like living smoke, hiding ion storms that could shred hulls. Elena throttled up, the shuttle lurching forward. Tension coiled in her gut, not fear but the weight of what hung in the balance. Billions on Earth, dismissed as insignificant by the Council's ancient decree, now pinned their hopes on this stolen truth. Humanity's uncharted innovations, from quantum drives to neural links, proved they weren't just survivors, they were disruptors. Alarms blared as the first wisps of nebula gas buffeted the ship. Sparks flew from a console, and Liam cursed softly, stabilizing the core sample in its containment field. Radiation spiking. If that thing destabilizes, we're vapor. Jax's hands blurred over wires, his banter cutting the edge. Worse than that time on Rigel 7? When you thought my coffee maker was a weapon. Focus, Elena snapped, but a ghost of a smile tugged at her lips. Their camaraderie was the glue, forged in training sims, tested in the void. She banked hard, dodging a plasma flare that lit the viewport in crimson. The plan was simple. Slip through, transmit the data, rally the fringe worlds against the Council's iron grip. But simplicity shattered when sensors pinged, a shadow detaching from the debris, a Council drone closing fast. Ambush! Liam shouted, his caution turning to urgency as he armed point defense turrets. The drone fired, a lance of energy grazing the shuttle's wing. Alarms wailed, the ship shuddered. Elena rolled them into a spin, hearts pounding in sync. Jack's shields now. Coming online, barely. He slammed a fist on the panel, diverting everything to the forward array. The nebula's glow intensified, masking their trail, but the drone adapted, its alien AI predicting their weave. Elena pushed the engines to redline, the shuttle groaning. A memory flashed, Earth's blue marble, the Council's hologram proclaiming, authority absolute, worlds in line. She'd redefined it with one defiant broadcast. Now survival demanded more. The drone loomed in the rear viewer, closing. Liam targeted it, laser stitching the void. One hit, a bloom of fire, but it kept coming, damaged but relentless. It's adapting to our fire patterns, he said, voice tight. Then we changed the dance. Elena flipped the shuttle inverted, diving into a denser cloud pocket. Ion winds howled, rattling the frame. Jax hooped as the shields held, a patchwork miracle. Eat that, you tin can. The maneuver bought seconds. The drone faltered in the interference, its sensors blinded. Elena punched through the nebula's heart, emerging on the other side with the neutral station's beacons winking like stars of salvation. But the cost showed, a hull breach venting atmosphere, the core flickering unstable. As the station's tractors locked on, pulling them in, Elena exhaled. The fleet's echoes faded behind, but the drone's signal lingered, a promise of pursuit. They'd won this skirmish, but the war for Earth's word raged on, etched in scars and unbreakable bonds. Elena gripped the jagged outcrop, her fingers raw against the volcanic rock that still pulsed with heat from the planet's restless core. Below, the lava flows snaked like veins of fire, hissing as they devoured the makeshift bridge Jax had rigged from salvaged hull plating. The air reeked of sulfur, thick enough to coat her throat, but she didn't cough, couldn't afford to. Myra's voice crackled over the comms, steady despite the static. Hold position, Captain. The Council's drone is circling back. If we don't cross now, they'll declare the trial forfeit. Jax swung from a harness beside her, his cautious eyes scanning the widening fissure. He'd always been the one to double-check seals and reroute power flows, the engineer who turned scraps into lifelines. This isn't holding, he muttered, sweat carving paths through the ash on his face. The plate's buckling. One more tremor and we're swimming in magma. He yanked a thermal clip from his belt, jury-rigging it to reinforce the edge, sparks flying like defiant stars against the gloom. The planet, Zarvol, wasn't just a test, it was the Council's cruel sieve, designed to break lesser species. For centuries, the Vexery overlords had proclaimed their authority absolute, culling worlds that dared question it. Earth had sent them here to prove otherwise, not with weapons, but with the stubborn spark that had carried humans from caves to stars. But the stakes had twisted. The drone, a sleek enforcer of rules, hovered now, its scanners probing for any unfair advantage. One violation, and humanity's petition dissolved into exile. Elena glanced at the horizon, where the rival KOH delegation waited on solid ground, their bioluminescent forms smug in the haze. They'd whispered alliances with the Council, betting on human failure. But Elena's team had no such luxuries, just grit and the camaraderie forged in tighter spots. Jax, boost the emitters. Make it look like natural seismic activity. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the rumble. He nodded, fingers flying over the portable console. On it. But if this backfires, we're the ones looking like cheaters. A low groan echoed from the bridge as another quake rippled through, the plate shifting inches. Myra's silhouette appeared across the gap, her diplomatic poise unbroken even as she anchored the far end with a grapnel line. She'd argued their case in the Council chambers with words like blades, but here action spoke louder. I've got the relay set, she called. Signal the drone it's environmental, our readings match the logs. The enforcer drone whirred closer, its lights pulsing in interrogation. Elena's heart hammered, but she forced a wry smile Jax couldn't see. Remember that asteroid run? We patched the breach with coffee filters and prayers. This is nothing. Jax snorted, a brief spark of their old rhythm amid the chaos. He'd grumbled then too, but his fixes had saved them all. As the drone's scan swept over, Jax triggered the emitters. Faux tremors danced along the sensors, masking their ingenuity as Zarvol's wrath. The machine hesitated, then veered away, logging the crossing as legitimate peril. Elena exhaled, leaping first across the shuddering span, her boots thudding onto stable earth. Jax followed, hauling the gear while Mira reeled in the line. They collapsed together against a boulder, breaths ragged, the lava's glow casting long shadows. But victory tasted bittersweet. The KLYH's distant cheers mocked them. Their path had been cleared by the humans' risk, a subtle sabotage now exposed in the drone's final report. The council would deliberate, and Earth's fate hung on it. Elena wiped ash from her brow, meeting her team's eyes. We redefined the rules today. Not with proclamations but proof. Jax clapped her shoulder, Mira nodded with quiet resolve. The planet's fury hadn't broken them, it had forged something sharper. Yet as the next quake whispered promises of more trials, they knew the cost lingered, scars on skin and trust alike. The dim glow of the auxiliary lights flickered across the command deck, casting long shadows that danced like specters over the consoles. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The air hummed with the low thrum of failing life support systems, each breath a reminder of how thin the margin had become. Beside her, Dr. Raj Patel hunched over a makeshift diagnostic panel, his fingers flying across the holographic display, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill seeping in from the breached hull. "We've got maybe 2 hours before the oxygen scrubbers give out completely," Raj said, his voice steady but edged with the fatigue of 3 sleepless days. He didn't look up, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his usual optimism had frayed into grim determination. "The patch on the forward bay is holding for now, but if that plasma vent flares again it'll tear right through." Elena nodded, her eyes fixed on the view screen. The alien fleet loomed in the distance, a glittering armada of sleek, iridescent ships that dwarfed the battered human vessel, the UNS Endurance. The Council's blockade encircled the neutral zone like a noose, their proclaimed authority unchallenged for centuries, until Earth had dared to send this lone explorer, armed not with weapons but with proof. Proof of humanity's unyielding drive, encoded in the data core they'd salvaged from the derelict outpost. But now, with comms jammed and engines sputtering, that proof felt like a cruel joke. Lieutenant Kira Voss burst through the hatch, her boots clanging against the grated floor. Blood streaked her flight suit from a shallow cut on her arm, but her eyes burned with the fire Elena had come to rely on. Engineering sealed off the leak, but we're blind on sensors. Those bastards are masking their approach, probably prepping another EMP pulse. Kira slammed a fist into her palm, the impact echoing sharply. "We can't just sit here. Give me the word and I'll take the shuttle out, draw their fire." "No," Elena said firmly, rising to her feet. The deck tilted slightly under her, a subtle reminder of the failing stabilizers. She placed a hand on Kira's shoulder, feeling the tremor of restrained energy. "We lose you and we're done. Raj, any luck on bypassing their interference?" Raj exhaled sharply, rubbing his eyes. "Partial. I've rerouted power from non-essentials. Lights, gravity in the rear sections. Got a narrowband signal punching through, but it's weak. If we can align it with the outpost's old relay, we might broadcast the data burst before they close in." He paused, glancing at the tactical overlay. Red icons swarmed like angry wasps. "But it'll take precise timing. One wrong move, and we're venting atmosphere into the void." The ship shuddered then, a deep groan rippling through the hull as another shockwave from the plasma storms battered them. Alarms blared briefly before Kira silenced them with a swift toggle. Elena's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of their desperate plan. The Council had dismissed Earth's petition as barbaric posturing, their ancient edicts declaring humanity unfit for galactic discourse. But the data core held records of human resilience, colonies built from asteroid scraps, wars ended through sheer ingenuity, bonds forged in the face of extinction. If they could transmit it, unfiltered, to every ship in range, it might shatter the blockade's illusion of invincibility. "All right," Elena decided, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Kira, get to the shuttle bay. Prep for evasive if they board, but hold position unless I say otherwise. Raj, lock in that signal. I'll handle the alignment from here." She settled back into her chair, fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease. The stars blurred on the screen as the Endurance listed, fighting the storm's pull. Kira hesitated, her jaw set. "Captain, if this fails—" "It won't," Elena interrupted, meeting her gaze. "Because we don't fail. Not today." Kira nodded, a ghost of a smile breaking through, and dashed out, her footsteps fading into the ship's bowels. As Raj fine-tuned the array, Elena watched the fleet tighten its formation. A single Council interceptor peeled off, its engines flaring with ethereal blue light, closing the gap with predatory grace. Her heart pounded, but she forced her breathing even, focusing on the rhythmic pulse of the console. The image of the outpost's crumbling spires lingered in her mind, the first human foothold beyond Sol, lost to a forgotten skirmish. They wouldn't let it be forgotten again. "Signals live," Raj announced, his tone laced with cautious hope. "Transmitting now." Elena hit the engage, and the Endurance came alive with a surge of energy, the data core's secrets flooding the ether. The interceptor loomed larger, weapons ports glowing. In that moment, as the storm raged and the void pressed in, Elena felt the weight of Earth's defiance, not in grand speeches but in the quiet resolve of her crew pushing back against the stars. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the stellar Vanguard's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the debris field ahead, twisted remnants of the Council's blockade ships, their sleek hulls now silent husks drifting in the void. Beside her, Dr. Kale, the cautious Xerian diplomat, stared at the tactical display, his iridescent scales rippling with unease. "This is madness, Captain. The Council's armada outnumbers us 10-1. One wrong move, and Sol System becomes a footnote in their archives." She shot him a wry smile, her fingers dancing over the console. "Footnotes are where the real stories hide, Doctor. Remember the relay sabotage? We turned their impenetrable network into a fireworks show." Across the bridge, Engineer Rao wiped sweat from his brow, his wiry frame hunched over a jury-rigged panel. The air smelled of ozone and recycled oxygen, sharp reminders of the failing life support they'd patched together after the last skirmish. The plan had backfired spectacularly in the outer rings. Rao's EMP burst meant to cripple the lead cruiser had instead drawn the full fleet like moths to a flame. They'd lost the auxiliary shuttle and with it half their sensor array. But in the chaos, Ilara had seen the opening, the Council's rigid formations, predictable as clockwork, clashing against human improvisation. Rao status on the decoys? Online, Cap 20 ghost signatures blooming now, make us look like a swarm. He grinned, teeth flashing white against his dark skin. The decoys, cobbled from salvaged drone parts and holographic emitters, mimicked a flanking maneuver no sane commander would attempt. Kale leaned forward, his voice a low rumble. "They'll see through it. The proclaimed authority doesn't fall for tricks. Won't matter if we hit the weak point first." Ilara keyed the comms, her voice steady over the fleet channel. "All hands, this is Voss. We're not here to win a war, we're here to redefine the rules. Punch it." The Vanguard surged forward, engines flaring blue against the starfield. Alarms wailed as Council interceptors peeled off, their energy lances slicing through the decoy illusions. One by one the ghosts winked out, but not before drawing fire from the Armada's core. Rao's hands flew across controls, rerouting power to shields just as a glancing hit rocked the ship. Sparks showered from an overhead conduit. Kale ducked, muttering ancient Xerian oaths. In the heart of the blockade, the Council's flagship loomed, a monolithic spire of authority, its docking bays bristling with enforcer pods. Ilara's scans had revealed the flaw, overconfidence in their quantum shielding, blind to the microfractures from earlier human guerrilla strikes. Target the ventral array. Rao, overload their feedback loop with that virus we pulled from the derelict. I, sending the package. Data streams raced across his screen, the virus, a nasty bit of code born from Earth's black market hackers, exploiting the Council's own comms protocols. It wormed in like a whisper then erupted. The flagship shuddered on their feed, internal lights strobing erratically as systems cascaded into failure. Kale's eyes widened. They're retreating? The authority never retreats. Not retreating, Ilara corrected, watching the Armada fracture. Re-evaluating. Human auxiliary craft, sleek fighters from the Martian yards, stubborn corvettes from Luna's shipwrights, swarmed the gaps, their pilots' camaraderie forged in zero-G bars and shared hardships. No grand speeches, just terse bursts. Flank left, I've got your 6. A rival squadron veered too close. Ilara's targeting AI locked and fired, the railgun slug tearing through armor with a satisfying crack. But victory came at a cost. The Vanguard's hull groaned under a final barrage, a breach venting atmosphere into the black. Rao sealed it with a foam patch, but the damage log scrolled red, propulsion at 40%, crew down 2 medics. Kale placed a tentative hand on her shoulder, his caution yielding to something like respect. You humans, you bend the unbendable. As the Council's remnants withdrew toward the hyperlane, broadcasting terms for parley, Ilara allowed herself a breath. Earth wouldn't kneel, not to proclamations or edicts. The stars stretched endless before them, scarred but unbroken, a canvas for whatever came next. In the quiet aftermath, she wondered if the galaxy would ever be the same, or if that was the point.